What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Legit Street Cars. My name is Alex, and last week I revealed to you this, my gorgeous carbon black 2000 E39 M5. And some of you guys had pointed out that you thought the rear subframe was cracked. In the reveal video, I showed you this picture, and if you look closely, it does actually look like it's cracked. And I didn't even see this while I was editing. So in today's video, we're gonna do a complete inspection of my M5. We're gonna find out exactly what is wrong with this car, and we're gonna try and figure out what parts on the M5 are original, what parts on this car actually have 409,000 miles on them. And to do this, we're gonna get a little bit of help from my buddy OJ Lopez at Fluid MotorUnion. He is the BMW guru, so he's gonna help us do this inspection, and we're gonna see what other cool stuff he's got going on in the shop.
I figured I'd show kind of what basically 70,000 miles can look like on each one of these.
Before we head over to Fluid and figure out what's wrong with this thing, I want to show you something that I've been doing wrong with my garage and home and how I fixed it. We've had a slew of robberies and break-ins lately, and quite honestly, I'm sick of sitting on the sidelines. I got a lot of toys to protect and a family to protect, so I think you guys will appreciate the new home security system I installed, made by a company called SimpliSafe. SimpliSafe is an incredibly effective and reliable security system that will make sure your home is safe. I installed my entire system in about 2 hours with no tools, and what I love is just how customizable this setup can be. I of course installed their HD cameras everywhere, and these things are legit because they come with motion detectors, night vision, and they record audio. The standalone motion detectors take about 5 seconds to install, along with the window and door sensors, but because I wanted to be prepared for everything, I also installed a water sensor near the water heater and a freeze sensor near my water main, and they even have a panic button in case you want to notify the authorities immediately. The base station has a sleek design, and it contains a battery backup, making sure your system is always ready. So with SimpliSafe, your garage and your home is going to be professionally monitored 24/7, and they'll alert you and the police if anything happens. This all comes at about 50 cents a day, no hidden fees, no contracts whatsoever, and if your Wi-Fi or your power goes out, the system still stays active, meaning you're protected for a worst case scenario. If you guys have been on the fence about home security, don't wait any longer. Check out simplisafe.com/legit. Big thank you to SimpliSafe for sponsoring this video. Now let's go check in on OJ and see what he thinks of the E39. All right, so like I said in the reveal video, in the McDonald's parking lot, we had about 80 codes, and OJ actually took a picture of some of the codes so we'd remember what they are, because we did clear them out. But it looks like we're doing a ton better. It looks like we only have like roughly 30 something codes, and most of them are in that airbag module.
So good news, bad news. The airbag module, go the bad news first. Airbag module's still faulted. It's going to be that internal fault that's condemning this thing.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to need a new airbag module. Okay. You can't really swap those over.
They're VIN coded, kind of married to the vehicle, right?
Yeah, it'll be trouble, anything you try to do with that. But the good news is the DME faults that we have in there, only one fault, and we had 4 in there before.
Okay.
Oxygen sensor, which you got a bad oxygen sensor most likely.
Right, and it's the rear O2, so it's not going to affect the way the car runs. I'll still fix it, but the light's been off for a couple hundred miles now.
Correct.
So whatever.
I think you know, it's not a big deal. So that's good. Good to see nothing else come back.
Right, right. So. Okay, cool. So the only thing I really got to worry about right now is probably just getting a new SRS control module. I'll get a new rear O2 if we can't code it out, and that's about it.
You can code it out. We can talk about that later.
Okay. It looks like our belt is coming apart. It doesn't look too bad, but it is wrapped around the fan there, and it's only a matter of time before that completely shreds itself. All right, so I think I've figured out the mystery on why this car has lasted so many miles. And of course, it's right here. It's got a Mercedes part on it. That pretty much explains everything. Actually, no, we have a huge mystery here, guys. Not a huge one, but check it out. This has an aftermarket harness extension to the mass airflow sensor, and it's got a Mercedes-Benz star on it. This car actually has 2 mass airflow sensors, one here and one here, and we were talking about how this might have been an old school modification on relocating the intake air temperature sensor to basically trick the computer into thinking it's sucking in colder air, increasing the timing. Very old school.
Yeah, it's more like the early to mid 90s when you'd see that mod pretty common. This harness to me just looks like it makes it easy for your DIYer to do it instead of having to pull pins and move stuff around. So I think that's what that is, but maybe your followers will know exactly where
comment down below, guys. We're gonna lift it up though right now and see if we can chase down where this other end of the harness is going to, and maybe it's going to that intake air temperature sensor. Oh, and while he's lifting it, these have these rubber bushings that, well, this one seems probably normal, but this one's totally broken. You can see it right there, so I gotta find a better solution for those. All right, so it looks like we have found the intake air temperature sensor, which is right here, but it's just kind of dangling around, so it's got threads in there. We should probably permanently mount that somewhere, but it is getting colder air and probably tricking the computer into giving us a couple extra ponies. Now, something the previous owner had told me about, and this is something I deleted on my E55 as well, is the secondary air injection pump, and they do this for pretty good reason on these cars, right?
Definitely a huge carboning issue where the heads would clog up, and you know, with short of some tools that would work sometimes, the only way was taking the heads off and basically, you know, drilling them out that way.
Right.
So.
Now, as far as leaks go, I mean, overall, it's pretty dry. There aren't really any crazy live leaks. I did see right in here, there are some drips, probably just a valve cover, something easy, or it just wasn't cleaned up from when they did the valve covers last. And check this out, this is the oil temperature and the oil level switch, right?
Yeah, very possible it could be the original. It has the older style on there, so.
Yeah, and look at this. This is like a serious sensor. It's got heat sinks built into it, and I've read these can be like kind of problematic.
Yeah, they can actually turn into nightmares in some cases. I've had cars where they fail internally and cause a no start issue. So it was kind of a funky design, the way they're wired into the LIN bus. That being said, this one looks like it's possibly original.
Maybe it's 400,000 miles. So. I might just replace that just because. How's the wheel bearing?
This side seems all right. Actually, suspension's pretty good, but we've got a little play in and out here. Okay, it's not that lower control arm bushing if you don't feel anything there.
Oh, you know what? Do it again. Oh, actually, yeah, you know what? I do feel a little bit of something.
Yeah, that ball joint there.
Yeah, you're right. That's it.
Those press out, super common. But if this is tight, then it's usually the wheel bearing.
All right, hit it. This is the part of the video in my editing.
What I know is wrong with the car. The differential is making a little bit
of... What? Right, there we go. Okay, all right, check it out, guys. So this is what everybody was talking about, this crack right here, and quite honestly, when you guys pointed it out to me, I was like, yeah, this subframe's totally got a crack, but it's right here that everybody was talking about, and it's totally an optical illusion. So this is just dirt in here, that's all. So the subframe is not cracked. We kind of dodged a bullet there, and that wasn't really like a super common thing on these M5s, right? We had the issue with the floorboards on the M3s.
The E39s were actually pretty robust. On the M3s, it was the actual mount where the subframe mounts would go, and it wasn't actually ever the subframe. What it would be is a crack would develop coming off of where the mount would go, and then that would eventually open up and loosen up the whole mounting area floor. So
it would rip the floor basically, right?
I've had some bad enough where it went beyond just welding up the crack where the whole floor had to come out.
Dude, next time you guys get one of those, I got to do a factory defect video, because that's kind of like total BS that happened on that car. But something else that we noticed, actually the previous owner told me this too, was this bushing has been replaced. Now, is that solid or is that like a poly?
It's probably a combo of both. The ends are probably metal, and there might be some sort of poly in there. Hard to say just looking at the outside.
And that's just the bushing that holds the, you know, just the mount, the front mount of
this
the differential.
Controls the up and down movement of it, so they would just waste on their own. And when they would, it would cause the car to bang around. Everybody knows about the M-car clunk, where just a little bit of slack in the drive shaft, in the rear differential, and in the transmission would kind of make the car discernibly clunk.
Right.
Well, that movement would always be in the front part of that bushing, and those just they go on their own. So this is an upgrade, basically.
Awesome. Yeah, it feels solid. All right, so something that's not really wrong with the car mechanically, but is definitely something I have to fix, is this diffuser and these aftermarket tailpipes. So I want to get the factory tailpipes back on the car. As you can see, this was kind of cut out, and I think it's actually melted. Yeah, right here. It's kind of melted, so we can put a new diffuser on and the factory tips. I think that'll look really clean, and then we are going to do a little bit of work with the exhaust. So it has the original resonator right here. It doesn't have mufflers or cats, and they did do a little bit of work here, adding in an X pipe, and it sounds great and it works fine, but it doesn't look the best. and OJ has a really nice E39 M5, you know, catback system for these cars. So in a future video, we're going to be doing a little bit of exhaust work on this car.
Everything looks pretty solid as far as the suspension goes.
I'm going to assume all these arms have been replaced, the bushings, probably a few times.
Most likely these look solid. They don't look like the cheap like Taiwanese kits that you get where you get like $10 control arms and you throw everything on at once.
Yeah, it's like a 12-piece kit for like $149.
This,
yeah, that's not it.
This actually looks pretty solid. Some good stuff on here.
Cool.
Still got original style thrust arm bushings here, which have a tiny crack in them, but there's no movement, so it's not worth even noting.
It's got a gearbox still, which is the last kind of generation of cars with gearboxes. I know with Mercedes back then, it was the same thing.
BMW went away from the gearbox even after this design.
Yeah. It doesn't leak anything. I'm going to say it's probably original, but maybe it's been resealed. We used to reseal them at Mercedes all the time.
I mean, we actually haven't done a whole lot of resealing of these. They usually didn't leak, besides maybe the fittings going to them.
Okay.
But the interesting thing about these is these had one of my favorite BMW features was Servotronic, which is low speed steering assist. It basically gives you an electronic assist to help slower speeds and parking.
Like speed sensitive power steering, basically.
Yeah, basically, it's a really nice feature, but the problem is there's no faults that tell you.
Where is this thing?
And let me show you this little sensor here, this little mount for it.
Oh yeah, here we go.
There's a little electric motor. If you can come to this side, you'll see the connector for it.
Okay.
So that motor, and the bolts are actually a little bit hard to get off when you do it, but that motor actually looks original. But that's what controls the Servotronic. Again, the problem is that there's no discernible faults when it goes out.
Okay.
So if you're one of those people that puts your car away from the winter, you may not even notice it's not working.
Right.
And I'd say most of these cars come in.
And when you drove the car, you think it's working.
I know it's working.
You know it's working, and it looks totally original. So that part, BMW did a pretty good job on, apparently.
Talking about surprising things that would last 400,000 miles, I've done so many of these that it would blow me away if that's that long, but it does look original.
Yeah, I mean, it's crusty. It looks...
It's even the plastic on it, like the rubber. That, you know, you can't get that look without having some miles on it.
All right, guys, we took the belt off to try and figure out why it is shearing the outer rib. And we've come to the conclusion that they replaced this shock right here. This is actually the tensioner itself. There's another one right in here. It's really difficult to see, but that one is brand new, but they didn't replace the actual tensioner with the pulleys. And they do have a little bit of play. It's really hard to tell on camera, but they do have a little bit of play, so I'm just gonna go ahead and replace both of these right here, get a fresh belt on there, and then just drive the car and see what happens. So a few things that my Mercedes guys might be able to appreciate with this car. First and foremost are these engine mounts. Look at how easy these engine mounts are to replace. I mean, there is just loads of room all the way around. And then there's things like the power steering pump, very easy to replace. The alternator doesn't look bad. The AC compressor looks really simple. And then with this manual transmission, it's just wide open. Like, I think we could get this out in a couple hours. And it has the slave cylinder right here with a bleeder screw, so you can service that very easily. And check this out. Lifetime fluid, which you know is total BS. They were doing that back in 2000 as well. And then something else, they're just little things you'd know if you work on your own car, but the crankshaft position sensor is down low. So on the Mercedes, it's usually up high. On this era vehicle, a little bit difficult to replace, so that's really easy. The lower oil pan looks really easy. There's a lot of really easy looking stuff to work on this car, so let's just hope that's all that breaks on this. And something that I wanted to point out to you guys, at first I thought this kind of looked like a dry sump oiling system, but it's not. It actually has a total of like 3 oil pumps, right, OJ?
Yeah, basically BMW never wanted the Vano system, which is, you know, super dependent on oil pressure, to run dry. So because this was a M car and it'd be doing corners, they added 2 scavenge pumps into the side of the block, basically to pick up extra oil and make sure that this thing never, even under hard cornering, has the Vanos go dry.
Okay, so it has your normal, traditional mechanical oil pump like you'd see on pretty much every car. And then these scavenge pumps are, you said there's 2 of them, right? Yeah, look at that, guys. Right in here, they're electronic oil pumps. And dude, like, do you think that's original?
Very possible it's original. Typically they'll fault when they go bad. You'll see it in the ECU. But there wasn't a whole lot of load on them. They're not working, you know, 100% of the time.
Right.
So that being said, it's kind of uncommon that you need to replace them.
Okay, so these guys right here, I mean, it's a pump. It's an electronic pump. and it looks like these have 409,000 miles on them. So it's just so interesting to me because there's some parts of the car that obviously have lasted way longer than other parts, and at the end of the day it's just an electronic pump. So there are a couple other big ticket items that are original on this car. I mentioned this in the other video, but the transmission, we have all the service records for this M5. The transmission is totally original. It's just had a couple of clutches. It looks like it's got a little tiny baby leak here. Actually, the fluid looks pretty fresh, but that is original to the car. We have the original exhaust manifold, the exhaust up until like basically this point here, and then the differential itself is original as well, but it is making kind of a little bit of a howling noise, so I guess that's probably to be expected after so many miles. In the axles, we don't have any receipts or anything on the axles being done, and like I said, I have everything, so I think those are original as well. But this is making a little bit of a noise. OJ and I drove this back from Atlanta 12 hours, and it wasn't really that bad at all. But you were thinking that, I mean, we should probably just change the fluid, right?
So, kind of a common fix we kind of came across working at the dealership. There was a service bulletin on the E60s and actually on some of the Z4Ms when they were out, that you would add an additive to the differential, and then you hit the drive in a figure 8 configuration for, you know, I think there was a number on there, I think like 12 or 20 turns or something like that. But basically, and I would kind of think it was like BS and stuff like that, but basically a lot of cases would fix the little bit of whine. Now, not all the time,
okay,
but I just kind of got in a habit, you know, and so did the other techs. When we had a differential noise, we'd throw a bottle in and see if it made it better. A lot of cases it did, but a lot of cases it didn't.
Do you have any of this stuff?
I actually do have a bottle or two. You can kind of show everybody what we were using.
You want to do it?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it. So
apparently the BMW tax is in full effect. These two little tiny bottles of differential fluid, just for the fluid, is $120 for both of these. But this is the good stuff. So this has the FM booster, which is the additive for the limited slip differential. So we're going to be swapping that out in a minute. Hopefully that gets rid of our little noise. But first, we have a little bit of show and tell. This is kind of a touchy subject in the BMW world, which is rod bearings, and these are the rods that are out of an S62 engine, which is what's in my M5, which is this engine block right here. And we wanted to show you these compared to the bearings out of an S85, the V10 that came in the E60 M5.
I figured I'd show kind of what basically 70,000 miles can look like on each one of these. The S62 is not notorious for bearing failure issues, although, you know, it's still a tighter tolerance. The early ones, as we know, ran the heavier oil. So it's definitely something that is possible, but I just don't see it when we pull it apart. Again, these were pulled out 68,000 miles, 70,000 miles. These ones are ones that we did where the customer had to have heard a noise from the bearing wear, and they just let it go. That actually turned into a whole needing the crankshaft, which is basically a wasted engine. But this is more or less the typical bearing wear. It definitely goes, this is light, starts here, and can end up here.
So these are the original bearings from that engine at how many miles?
Around 70,000 miles.
70,000, and these are recommended to be replaced roughly every...
It honestly is tough to say. There's a lot of variables, and that's why there's so much debate going on.
What would you do?
Me, personally, if I was doing the bearings, I would go with the upgraded. There's two companies out. VAC Motorsports owns one, and then there's another company, BC Bearings, something along those lines. They both make good kits, but I would go with an upgraded bearing, and then I would change it out. I would not let it get to 80,000 miles. I'd try to get it before then, and then hopefully, if you're using the right oil and using the right oil change intervals, that should be a problem that you don't run into again. I personally haven't seen. We've done 2 sets of bearings on a customer's car. Okay. But given that if you were using factory bearings and put it back in, I would say 50 to 60,000 miles. Okay. It's weird, Alex. I pulled them out at 100,000 miles and they haven't looked as bad, and I pulled them out at as low as 40,000 miles and had them look identical. But considering it basically will toast the engine, you're probably... It's not something you want to mess with. Yeah, exactly. Right here we have an S62 engine block, and OJ's going to show us something else that kind of goes wrong.
with these, something that there really isn't much of a fix for, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, it actually isn't unique to BMW as well. Porsche is using alu-steel engine blocks, Mercedes using alu-steel engine blocks. A lot of the European manufacturers are, and what it is, it's basically a coating that allows the piston to slip up and down on the aluminum without causing too much issue, too much friction, too much heat. The issue though is that you have aluminum, and aluminum isn't like steel or like iron when you're using it. It doesn't just flake off when it starts to damage, when it starts to get pits in it. It does what's known as galling. I have an example here of the start of some galling. If you look at this edge, see how it kind of looks wavy and rippled?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, you guys can see it right there. It's right here. And yeah, and this is why you had the engine out, right? Was to try and get that repaired?
Correct, yeah. Basically, there isn't much you can do about it. You could smooth it over. This actually was smoothed over, so it shouldn't cause a ring sealing issue, but it gets a lot worse from here.
Okay, and anything we can do about like any preventative stuff? Now,
I don't know of particularly one way of stopping this from happening. I do know what I would do if it was me. Cold starts. This issue is actually really prevalent in the Midwest because we do have the extreme cold days and then the extreme warm days. So it seems like the Midwest cars suffer a little bit more from engine blocks being, wasted by the galling phenomenon.
Okay.
But what I would do in my cars, don't go any further than 6,500 miles for a full synthetic oil change. Cold starts, like especially in those really, really cold, like down in the teens, down in the negative days. If you don't have to be driving the car, don't start it on those days. It does not like that point where it's getting the oil moving. I've had cars that I know were fine before, and then they went through a winter and they were smoking afterwards because of that. So,
yeah, and my car's been in Georgia, basically in Tennessee, its entire life, which may be why it's in such pretty good condition with the engine too.
I think you're probably going to be okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect to see anything.
Okay, cool. All right, let's go change out some diff fluid.
Okay, so you're over full.
Yeah, way over full.
Yeah, you do not want to overfill these. There's a temptation to, because everybody thinks more is better.
This fluid actually doesn't look that old.
It looks pretty decent. It's got some color to it, so I wonder what they used. But like typically the BMW stuff's clear.
Guys, a little pro tip when you're servicing your differential, always take out the top drain plug, the fill plug first, just in case it's totally stripped out, because if it is, you won't be able to fill the fluid back up and your car is going to be completely disabled. And also, it's a good idea to take this out first, because if you don't and you pull the bottom one out, this kind of just splatters all over the place. So this way, air is getting in through the top and it comes right out into your drain pan. There we go. All right, while OJ is pumping our new fluid into the differential, I just gotta geek out about one last thing for now. I'm probably, I love cool mechanical stuff, especially comparing it to different makes and models. So this right here is not a fuel pump, it's actually a massive fuel filter, probably one of the biggest inline fuel filters I've ever seen. And if you go to the fuel rail on this car, it looks like a returnless deadhead system, because it really kind of is, but this is very similar to the LS1 F-body, where you do have the fuel pressure regulator right here, and it does actually return back to the tank. So this isn't your traditional returnless system. It does have a return, it just does it way before it gets to the rail, and I thought that was pretty cool, and it looks like it has some kind of leader on here as well. All right, so OJ is all done with the diff fluid. He is just cleaning everything up, and at this point, I got a bunch of figure eights to do in the parking lot to see if it fixes our little differential noise. But in a future video, we are running velocity stacks on this thing, right?
Yeah.
You have them?
I have them. I have them ready to go. I think you're gonna enjoy it. I think everyone will enjoy it.
Nice. I can't wait to do that with the custom exhaust. Throw it on the dyno, and then we still got to find a low mileage E39 M5 for a dyno battle.
We've got probably one of the best sounding V8s, in my opinion, in the world. This thing's going to sound good, and it should be interesting to see what it's putting down after 400,000 miles.
Right. That'll do it for today. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video, and if you live in the Chicagoland area and you need literally anything done to your car, check out Fluid Motor Union in Naperville, Illinois, and they're offering 10% off anyone who mentions LegitStreetCars, and the date that it expires will be posted in the description box down below. If you like this this video, hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. And most importantly, have an awesome day. I'll catch you all in the next video.